Hello everybody, hello friends again. So the next project, the next exciting project. So what I thought we could do this time is explore the idea of actually drawing from film, which can be so much fun, especially on a sort of rainy afternoon when you're in quarantine. Taking drawings from film. So I mean, you're normally in the life drawing studio. I'm looking at the advantages and how to sort of link it in with your life drawing. What are the advantages of drawing from film? It's actually, you've got these people who are absolutely in character. There's this added layer of reality. There's this feeling of narrative. There's this feeling of story that's so engaging. You can pick films, for instance. There's a film noir, like black and white, old black and white films. That can be, make it a bit easier for the compositional evaluations and things like that. But you can, any film that you really like. Classical films I find are brilliant. Another sort of feeling, you're sort of seizing reality, you're seizing a moment. Selecting it, and there's many different ways of doing it. If you're really brave, you can just roll the film and then you find an image and then you just leave it rolling and you just do it all from your visual memory. The other way is you can actually just freeze the frame. So you're just sort of, a quicker way actually is just to find a trailer, because that will choose some of the most dynamic images. If you want to select from a lot of films, you can just choose a trailer on the laptop and click on the trailer and freeze it and freeze that frame and go on. So the disadvantage is that you're actually drawing from photographs, which is a bit different from the model. So when you're in the studio, you've got this wonderful visual flow of reality. You've got your real eyes. There's nothing that compares to the real eye as opposed to the mechanical eye. Okay, so you're getting all this visual phenomena, and it's going in through your soul and out onto the drawing surface. So the visual language, and the layers of, those kind of layers of reality are going to be much stronger. So when you're drawing a photograph, it's what I call secondary reference. It's like a sort of veil of something missing when you're drawing from a photograph. And it's quite a common mistake when you just sort of sit there a little bit too comfortably and replicate the photograph, okay? So what I'm talking about now is when you're actually drawing from a photograph, try and imagine that you're actually there in that film or the director or whatever in that situation. Not really in a film. Films are highly artificial, highly contrived. If you really learn more about the film industry, you can learn about how they contrive that seemingly beautiful reality. But when you're drawing from a photograph, back to drawing from a photograph, try and imagine the almost sort of feeling the story, okay? If you simply replicate the photograph, your image will be quite dull. So, sorry, the film might have jumped a bit. So we're talking about being in the gallery, looking at the exquisitely, copied photograph-paintings, and you wonder why you're impressed by it, but you don't feel very much emotion by it. And that's because it's like a replication of a photograph. So I think it's really important to explore how you replicate photography. I think there are artists who really, really knew how to do it. I think Marlene Dumas is an example. She would take images from high journalism, really good journalistic stories. I hope I'm correct. Anyway, sort of quite dramatic stories out of papers, and then she would so totally make them. She would, what I call, take ownership of it with her watercolours and things like that. There's another artist, William Kentridge. I'll show you. I wonder if I could show you straight away, actually. William Kentridge, you should have got top, sorry. Kentridge, who I talked about in the last lecture. Who was, he was so good at kind of drawing from film. I mean, this, for instance, is a picture. This was a picture actually. He was doing. Is that right? Okay. So this was, so it was definitely use of film and creating films. Actually, he would sort of create films little, I'm just trying to think, little cine films, 35mm films, and combine it with drawing in a very, very interesting and creative way. Bringing artists who use photography and use film. Photography is so widely used. Film is obviously so widely used in the contemporary art world as well. So it's sort of how you use it and sort of taking ownership of it. So I think what's another advantage of doing this with regard to your life drawing as well is it will give you a sort of second view, an added layer of knowledge regarding composition. Because I think with this exercise, it's actually quite a weakness in my own process, is I'm not always very good at sticking to a certain composition. And my husband's brilliant at it, but I'm not always so good at that. I just tend to draw from a starting point and let it go. I'm going to give you a very quick sort of crash course in composition, and that might help you sort of understand when you're selecting an image and realising the compositional forces within it. For instance, I thought this was quite fun actually, this particular process here. This was a piece of paper I prepped earlier, and then I placed a sort of piece of white paper over it and then did the sort of this ink wash. In fact, I think it was with one of those inks. I've lost the name of it. And it was actually in Cornelison's in Great Russell Street with a little bit of Chinese ink and lots of water. It could be anything actually. It could be tea. Could be coffee. Could be just a wash. And I wanted to create this sort of white square. I thought it was quite fun. But it was also a way of actually explaining to you. I then did a drawing of a little man, okay, and then put it in reverse and painted it black, so you can sort of play around with it both ways. I mean, the main reason I was going to do this was to explain a kind of composition to you. So placing figures, unlike the life drawing studio, you're not really doing a figure and interior, you're generally drawing the figure, getting to grips with drawing the figure itself. Whereas with films, you're drawing a figure in the context of life as it flows by. And, so placing your figures, I mean, you can just sort of obviously just copy the frame of the film as it goes. But for instance, pictorial design. If I was going to place this guy, which is quite nice there, I think that's distracting, let's use it on a plane surface. If I was going to place this guy right dead centre of the image, it's actually a little bit framed, it's a little bit organised, it's a little bit too balanced. However, the moment I bring him down, you can feel the sense of space, okay? Slightly to the left, perhaps this space feels a bit vacant, I'm not quite so sure. So there's something a little bit about placing figures that are slightly, what might be quite interesting with this one is if you placed him sort of further top left, I think because he's actually walking that way, I feel that's probably the most interesting position. So pictorial design, selecting things in accordance with their compositional usefulness. Okay, so composition, a very quick run through. So early Renaissance would have compositions that were always telling a story. You'd have Mary and Joseph, this narrative of Mary and Joseph, biblical compositions of Mary and Joseph on their way to the Nazareth. You had lots of them, one there, telling the story. So you had the figures actually telling the story, leading the eye through the composition. And then sort of post-Renaissance was very often geared around a triangle. I've been very, very general here. I could go into more detail, but I'm wandering away from film. So I don't know if you can see that. Up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yep. So there you go. That's a Rubens, and you can see the sort of crucifixion. Is it a crucifixion? Yes, it is a sort of crucifixion. Can you feel the triangular information that's going on? If you take, for instance, Michelangelo's Pieta in the in St. Peter's in Rome. It's all a triangle. Okay, so it's that all those, you go into the National Gallery, you'll see what I mean, lots of Renaissance pictures, the Madonna and the Child, it's a lot of triangle, and then sometimes this kind of zigzag stuff going on behind. So that was, I think composition for many, many centuries, many decades, was about balance, about peace, about harmony, about arranging things. But it actually, the more it's kind of developed, the more kind of almost contrived, every revolution gets more and more extreme as it gets to the end of itself. So I think, by the time that we had the Victorians, people were sort of bursting for something new. Yes, so then we have, I'm just going to talk about very quickly about, that's William Kentridge, about Van Gogh, sorry, I should have done it first. Van Gogh. So Van Gogh's mark making. That's Japan. Yeah, Van Gogh's mark. I've heard Van Gogh's mark making like swarms of bees. The brushstrokes, like a swarm of bees leading up to a focal point. He would use his brushstrokes. So I think that's, if I can lift this very heavy book. Yeah, I think that's quite a good example. Can you see the brushstrokes are sort of leading the eye? Okay, so that's Van Gogh. And then I think this sort of, can't wait to get on with this actually, the Japanese, that was an earthquake, the Japanese influence, combined with the influence of photography. So Ports of Japan opened in 1853, and all these little Japanese prints started flooding into Paris. You get Manet, you get Monet, they're given a little gift, a little Japanism vase, they unwrap it, and the wrapping, oh my God, look at that, isn't that amazing? So it sort of revolutionised thinking. And why? Because of the compositional cut-off. But exactly the same with photography. As photography developed, you had images that were severed. And then people became more sort of badass, as I say, a little bit more, things became less arranged, less beautifully arranged. You had this feeling more and more like you were simply a passerby, glimpsing reality. You had people's legs going into an image, but there was no body, so you wanted to sort of look into the image and look round the frame and say what's happening around the frame. So there was this lovely sense of informality, which it was seismic shift. So going back to actually where Japanism came from, so the earlier influence the Japanese was the Chinese. So this is just an ancient Chinese book, and you can see where the cut-off actually came from. So, so I'm probably doing it the wrong way around. But yes, if you were reading a Chinese book, or you were reading a scroll with some visual information, you'd be constantly doing this. It's actually almost got a sort of filmic quality. So you'd be doing this. So at every single moment, your image would be concealed or cut off. That's just a very ancient calligraphy book. But I'm talking about if you can just picture that as an image being severed and changing each time. It's almost got a sort of filmic quality. And then, for instance, taking that into Gu Hongzhong. I don't know if you can see that. That's just the cover of a book. Okay, can you see it? So that, I think, is a scroll. But you can see how the edge of the bed is completely severed. It's this decentralization, this wonderful sense of informality. That's Gu Hongzhong, so that takes you right back. And then, let's have a little look at some more. I think, Anselm Kiefer, can't resist showing him again. Anselm Kiefer, this is what I showed you before. I think is very interesting how this is a sort of like a very, very giant picture of a ploughed field, and all the lines, the poetry lines, and the lines of the drawing are leading up to sort of the topish. So your eye is being led. So Leading the Eye by Mark Making. And then these books talking about the destruction of knowledge and democracy in the books. And I was talking about the role of writing as well, how writing can be, I think, yes, Kentridge, interestingly, Kentridge would constantly, I mean, obviously I showed you this last time of the typewriter over the text, okay, but in his film, I mean, he just to take what we were talking about before further, but in his film, he would do these films, yes, I mean, for instance, this was actually in his film. He would do text over text, and then he would have himself marching across the image in the film itself. So William Kentridge, can you see his name, William Kentridge? Have a look, it's such fun. I would really, really Google him, have a look, and you can actually look at his films and you can learn a whole lot. And then finally, what I just can't resist leaving out, because it does have a filmic quality, is Bonnard, our friends Bonnard and Vuillard. So Vuillard, within the context of the Life Drawing Room, Vuillard is difficult to sell because it's all about interiors. Sometimes I wonder with Vuillard, are we talking more about the wallpaper or are we talking about the model? So it's very much a figure in interior, and this thing about emphasis. The emphasis seems to be everywhere. It's almost screaming at you when you actually look at it. So does that philosophy work within the life drawn context? I'm not quite sure. However, it's really important to. I think they were such revolutionaries with composition. If you have a look at this picture, you can see this woman. I don't know if you can see it. Is that okay? This woman, she's so cropped, she's just sort of randomly walking off the image. And there's also other cropped things going on that are severed. You're just wondering what's going on around the corner. There's so many interesting things with him. Let's have a look at another one. Yes, this one. So there's this sort of feeling of filmic time. This woman has just evidently just walked into the room and she's still got her hand on the door handle. So you've got this sort of this informality, like you've just walked by, this kind of seized moment. And then talking about a perfect example of compositional cut-off, I didn't think this, look at the lower drawing, look at the drawing below of the man with his severed head. That was so typical of that time. The composition of that severed head. That was a drawing. I can't believe that's by Vuillard, but I'm trying to read in the book. It seems to be, yes, by Vuillard. I thought it was by another artist. Forgive me if I'm wrong, I couldn't see. But it doesn't look like a Vuillard drawing. It's supposed to be an early Vuillard drawing, maybe a self-portrait. And then, and this one, can't resist showing this one. This child, sorry, it's a very curved page, can you see? This child with her father. So the parent or the man is completely off, not completely, but a lot of him is off the side of the page, and then she is also cropped as well. There's almost this camcorder vision, which is a lot of fun. And then and another thing I was going to talk about as well, because I'm on composition but less to do with film, is colour composition. How a red, this is just like a little shop of Vuillard, you see this little red shop which immediately becomes a focal point. So you can have a very, very subtle image, and then this little red area of red becomes a focal point. So warm colours tend to come forward, cool colours tend to recede. So if you do an ocean of cool colour and then a red, that's going to become a focal point. So you're asking yourself, composition is really all about emphasis and de-emphasis. What are you trying to say? And I think when you're drawing from the film, that's what you want to ask. What am I trying to say? What's the image all about? So you might, unlike Vuillard, you might not want to draw every single bit of flower in the wallpaper. You want to sort of boil it down and distill it into what is this image? It's a boy on a mountain, boy. Okay, that's the thing about sort of that generalising of detail. Okay, I think I'm nearly there. So I'm just going to do one with you. You saw the ones that we did, that I did sort of earlier on. So I have a film running here. And so again, just like last time I was talking you through the table, I've got as many things as I possibly have. Just, it's no exact science. What are you comfortable with? What are you uncomfortable with? You can again use it as a way to find different media outside the life room. It's a very good way of experimenting with different surfaces. So these surfaces I have pre-prepped, again like last time. So I've just run some tea and some ink. I wasn't quite happy with it, so I did it the other side. Just scraps of paper. This has a tiny bit of newspaper collage inspired by Kentridge text. And then, yes, I've got sort of another one with more collage on it. Okay, so to me, these surfaces are inviting me in. If I'm not sure I want to do it on that side, I could just do it on the white. I found that I love just going back to what my sketchbook images with my good friendly pen, my trusty pens. I've got an italic pen, quite a loose italic pen, and then I've got a drawing pen. I've got my Chinese ink. So I've got these inks. I'm not using tea today. I could have stewed some tea bags and put them into lots of tea bags and put them into a bowl and added some coffee, but I didn't. I didn't today. So I've got some Chinese ink. I might just, before I actually leap, because I know I'm going to be in the moment, I'm going to pre-mix a wash. Maybe I won't use it, I don't know, but I want it ready. That's the sort of neat ink. I'll have that all nice and ready. That's my neat ink. This could be further mixing. I've got my water, I've got my paper. Which one am I going to use? Okay, I'll just use this one. And I keep, as you saw in the earlier part, I kept it quite small. So, so this is quite lovely. He's just sort of, so I'm not showing the movie really for copyright purposes. Okay, so I'm just sort of trying to keep it as kind of loose. This is in a kind of deep shadow, as loose as I can. And again, this kind of feeling of like bird's nesty lines, if you can, what does it actually, just getting some feeling of this face of this child lying down. So I've just frozen that image with the face of the child lying down. Up, it goes up. Okay, so I'm just, and then this is in this gorgeous kind of depth of shadow. And this is just very, very long and very, very dark. Everything is in a kind of darkness. And then the shoulder coming up. Wonderful kind of feelings of angles in the shirt. This is very, very dark here. Eyebrow coming up here. And this is sort of lost in a kind of wonderful shadow. And then I suppose that what's so sweet and tender about this is his arms sort of coming down. It's a close up of his face. I haven't got the rest of his head, which is going off the edge. Actually, another thing you kind of should almost do is put a timer on it in the same way as the life class, so you don't start just sort of getting bored and replicating it. It just gives it that sort of sense of urgency. So this is the other hammer. It's in light, it's in light, it's in light. And this line actually is sharing with the line of this. And then I've got this other hand coming up the wrist. I'm slightly kind of rushing it. That's the other hand. Yeah. Now it's sort of beginning to take shape. So it takes a while. So give this spin. It takes a while before it takes shape. Patient, and this is very, very dark as well. So I quite like having a lovely kind of structure. So beautiful, this charm. Structure, a lovely kind of structure of lines to work with. I wonder if that's enough. So I've chosen quite an awkward image, which is just not particularly clever. But and then what's the wash? This is just like very dark. This is very dark. This is very dark. This is very dark. The whole scene, the whole image is in this kind of wonderful river. In fact, actually I could pick up my neat brush here, actually with his hair, because that's sort of like ridiculously dark. This is ridiculously dark. This is ridiculously dark. And that actually could be, I know, sorry, it's not my best, that could be enough, okay? That could be enough. You could see the drawings before, I think they were slightly better. Yeah, that could be enough for that one. And I think it sort of reflects the image of what I'm showing, what I'm seeing, what I've been seeing. So I froze the frame and I just did that. And that was quite quick, wasn't it? Quite immediate, quite quick. You can use anything, oil pastels, dry pastels, felt pen, watercolour, anything. So, and then, it's this thing ultimately of taking ownership. You can then develop it, you could then enlarge it, you can then move it around. So, sorry, not my best demonstration, but you can see that sort of process of how, that's one way of doing it. Find your own way of doing it. Experiment. Try and do about 3 drawings of each still or each idea in different media and in different surfaces. That's a challenge, isn't it? And then do another one and do another one. Do as many as you can. And you can do that little sequential. Can I just jump up a second? Just stay there. I think what's great fun is if you can do something a little bit like that. Can you see? Yep, a bit closer. See? So you can do something like that, and I think that's such fun because it has that quality of a negative. It looks quite fun. So you could explore that way, you could explore this way, there's many different ways you can explore it. But most important as ever, have fun, enjoy it. It's not scary, don't make it a scary thing. A lot of it's going to go wrong, quite a bit might end up in the bin, doesn't matter. Really, really enjoy it, okay? Yeah, have fun. Thanks, bye.